Chapter 582 Royal Family's Banquet, 3. Ju Ying turned around and frowned when she saw Consort Shu, Ju Joying, and Ju Jiaqing. However, the three of them still quickly stepped forward and bowed. Greetings, Consort Shu. Ju Ying and Ji Wanning also greeted Ju Joying. Do get up. What were you guys talking about just now? Consort Shu helped them up and asked with a smile. It's nothing much. We were mainly talking about the rabbit lantern and then about the fireworks in Sister Ju's hometown. Mingyu replied. I've heard King Kang mention the fireworks over there before, they're indeed one of a kind. Consort Shu nodded. I heard that Mingyu has already started training female soldiers. How are the results? It's still too short for results, and they are still practicing the horse stance. I'm afraid it'll take 1.5 years to see any effect. That's true. Sorry, I was just too impatient. Consort Shu nodded and asked Ju Ying, I heard that the greenhouse was successful. I wonder what vegetables are being harvested this time? Well, other than the leafy vegetables we harvested previously, there are also cucumbers, beans, tomatoes, eggplants, cucumbers, pumpkins, carrots, and so on. Good. There are both thick and thin vegetables. Looks like we're going to have a good meal tonight. Ju Ying smiled and did not reply. You guys go ahead and stroll around. Shall we go and see the other lanterns? Mingyu asked. Go ahead. There's a lotus lantern over there that's very well made. You can go over and take a look. After Consort Shu finished speaking, she pointed to the left. Thank you for your guidance, Consort Shu. After Mingyu finished speaking, she immediately led the two of them away. After they left, Consort Shu turned her head to look at Ju Ying's back and said with a smile, I didn't expect that pitiful girl back then would turn out this well. Ping Yang sure has a good eye. The two sisters felt uncomfortable after hearing this. What did Consort Shu mean by pitiful? Was she implying that the Ju family abused Ju Ying? If it weren't for her status, Ju Joying would have retorted. Ju Jiaqing muttered indignantly, what's the use of a concubine's daughter who has no one to rely on, no matter how good she looks? Consort Shu glanced at her after hearing this and was too lazy to pay attention to her. She turned her head to look at Ju Joying. Seeing that she was submissive and didn't show any dissatisfaction, Consort Shu nodded. No matter what Ju Joying was thinking, it was fine as long as she did not show it or embarrass her son. She stood up and was about to leave when a few girls walked over and bowed. Greetings, Consort Shu. Chapter 583 Royal Family's Banquet, 4, Yes. Ju Joying turned around and left. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. Before, she could have been the main consort, but because of Consort Shu's dissuasion, His Highness made her the secondary consort. All these years, she has always been respectful to her. She was just short of clinging to her daily, yet Consort Shu harbored no sincerity in her respect. On the other hand, Consort Shu was beaming with joy the moment Hong Suji arrived. Was it because her father was not as influential as the Hong family? Or did she look down on her from the very beginning? She got really angry when she thought of this. When she thought of His Highness' cold attitude toward her, the anger in her heart rose further. It seemed that she had been too obedient to them in the past. It was time to let them see the capabilities of the Ju family. Thinking of this, she returned to look at her child. Seeing that her daughter was already asleep, she sent someone to send the baby back and then went to look for her mother. After Ju Ying and her group walked around for a while, they encountered a large group of officials in official uniforms surrounding Jiyu Chungrui and saying something. However, those officials were all unfamiliar faces. Ju Ying turned to look at Mingyu and asked, Mingyu, where did those officials come from? If I'm not wrong, they are from the northern regions here for the sweet potatoes, new wheat seeds, and greenhouse vegetables. Haven't the sweet potatoes and wheat been promoted to them? The country is so big, so how can a small amount of seeds cover the entire country? My father told me that sweet potatoes are mostly distributed in mountainous and sandy areas. For those with good land, wheat was given. They were allowed to stay in the capital this time to give them options to support each other. Ju Ying listened to the Mingyu points and nodded. She suddenly thought of Jiu Zi, who got her position snatched by the daughter of Magistrate Zhao and almost killed her. Would Magistrate Zhao be here this time? After that, the three strolled and went straight to the banquet venue. This banquet wasn't set in the imperial court. Instead, they set up a large tent outside the imperial court in a large open space. After entering, they found a table for the Jiyu residents and sat down. When Zhu Ying saw there was tea, she asked the palace maid to bring a pot. She then poured a cup of tea for each of them. After taking a sip of tea, she glanced at the 4 rows of long and dense seats and said, "It seems that the scale of this banquet is very large. Yeah, all officials above the 5th rank in the capital, including all officials all over the country, must participate." Mingyu nodded. She added, "Oh, haha, if you are selling your vegetables again, Sister Ju, remember to leave some for our King An's imperial residence." What are you saying? When have we ever not remembered King An's imperial residence? I knew Sister Ju always treated me the best. A princess calling a woman without an imperial mandate her sister? Aren't you afraid of ruining seniority? The 8th princess walked in with a group of people and retorted, "This princess status is not high enough, so there's no need to suck up to others." After Mingyu finished speaking, she glanced at the crowd behind the 8th princess and said, "I suggest that you carefully identify the people around you and consider your friends seriously. Mitch, you're just jealous that I have so many friends." After the 8th princess finished speaking, she brought her sisters to sit around her. She has no distinction between good and bad friends. Mingyu shook her head and ignored her. Zhu Ying smiled when she saw this. "It's fine, as long as we did our part." "That's true. Anyway, the two of us don't really care about each other." Mingyu nodded in agreement. "By the way, Warning," she said to Jiyu Warning, "how's the preparation of your dowry going? Is there anything I can help you with?" Chapter 584 Royal Family's Banquet, 5, Not at the moment. Zhu Ying has already helped me prepare most of what I need. If there is anything else, I will look for you again. All right, don't stand on ceremony. As the three of them chatted, many more guests walked in one after another. However, most of them were women and young ladies, and there were also some young boys. Soon, more than half of the tent was occupied, and the chattering almost sounded like a market. Zhu Ying curiously spread out her divine senses to look and found that most of them were matchmaking for their children, especially the madams who weren't from the capital. They were all trying their best to promote their children for engagement. Many people even enjoyed watching this. At this moment, Zhu Ying thought of something. She looked at Mingyu and asked, "Mingyu, how old are you this year?" Mingyu, who was drinking tea, was surprised by the sudden question. "I'm 17 after the day of the Lunar New Year." "What's wrong?" "17? Why didn't consort and get you ready for your marriage?" "My marriage has to be approved by the emperor, but since the emperor has not mentioned it, my father did not dare to ask. He has to ask soon. If you delay any longer, all the good men of your age will be snatched away. It will be difficult to find a suitable one by then." Jiyu Warning's heart skipped a beat when she heard that. She immediately remembered Mingyu's miserable ending in her previous life. Even though the sudden change in King Rui had changed the political situation in this life, who knew if the emperor would still use Mingyu for a marriage alliance? Thinking of this, she nodded in agreement and said, "Indeed, the emperor is always busy, and has also a man. Perhaps he didn't take this matter to heart. You and your father should choose a few candidates and report to the emperor. If it's suitable, he will definitely agree to your marriage." Mingyu blushed and nodded. 111 Mention it to my mother later. I think you should mention it to your grandmother too. Zhu Ying added. No matter what, the Empress Dowager and Madame Consorten were friends. It was safer for her to come forward compared to Consort, and Mingyu understood what Zhu Ying meant. She nodded and said, "I understand." Seeing this, Zhu Ying did not say anything more. She simply poured another cup of tea and drank it. A moment later, a mother and daughter walked over and bowed. "Greetings, Princess Mingyu." Mingyu glanced at them. After confirming that they did not know each other, she raised her head and replied, "Do raise your heads, there's no need to be so polite." "Thank you, Princess." After the two of them got up, The woman looked at Zhu Ying and asked, "Are you Mrs. Jiyu?" "You are. I'm the wife of Lord Zhao of the Kaiyang Prefecture. This is my daughter, Zhao Xiuli." The woman introduced herself. Zhu Ying looked at them in surprise. Although they had never met before, they were technically considered enemies. For a moment, she could not figure out why they had come. "What's the matter?" she asked directly. Madame Zhao looked at her vigilant gaze and smiled awkwardly. "I know because of Xiuying, Zhu Ying directly interrupted her. "Just say what you're here for." Madame Zhao did not speak but looked at Mingyu and Jiyu Waning. Mingyu looked at Zhu Ying. Zhu Ying hesitated for a moment and nodded. She wanted to see what the mother and daughter wanted from her. "Let's go, Waning, accompany me to the toilet." Jiyu Waning grabbed Zhu Ying's hand. Noticing that Zhu Ying had just squeezed back, she got up and walked out. Only then did Zhu Ying invite the mother and daughter to sit down. "If you have something to say it now." After Madame Zhao sat down, she tilted her head and whispered, "I want to work with you and your husband to take down Zhao." When they arrived outside and found a remote place, Zhu Ying heard Miss Zhao ask in panic, "Mother, what should we do? She won't help us. If it really doesn't work, we can only go all out and report him." "No, Mother, we will lose our lives." "Fine, let's die together. The three of us can't become their stepping stones. Otherwise, I won't die in peace." "But, Madame Zhao tied at her daughter's clothes and said, "If it really doesn't work out, you must change your appearance and escape. Mother has had enough of these aggrieved days." "Mother, all right, take advantage of the fact that they are not watching us now. Hurry up and leave the palace, or else it will be too late. But, go. If possible, remember to go back and bring your brother out." After Madame Zhao finished speaking, she gave her a roll of banknotes. Chapter 586 Royal Family's Banquet, 7. Miss Zhao hesitated for a moment but still took the money. The mother and daughter knocked out a palace maid resembling Miss Zhao. Miss Zhao quickly changed into the palace maid's clothes and ran toward another palace. When Madame Zhao returned, she saw two nannies in a hurry from afar. She panicked and immediately quickened her pace, but she was quickly stopped by a young eunuch, who handed her over to two nannies. One of the older nannies asked directly, "Where's Miss Zhao?" "She went to relieve herself." Madame Zhao replied expressionlessly. "Liar." After the old nanny finished speaking, she pushed her toward the young nanny and said, "Take her away and lock her up." The young nanny nodded and took out a dagger. While holding on to Madame Zhao, she pressed against her lower back with the dagger. Meanwhile, the elderly nanny brought the young eunuch and a few palace maids to look for Miss Zhao. When they found the clothes Miss Zhao had left behind and the fainted palace maid, the others continued searching while the young eunuch hurriedly ran to the Empress. Zhu Ying was a little confused when she saw this. What did Madame Zhao know that could make the Empress so wary of her? And that Miss Zhao, was she really meant to be a palace maid? Zhu Ying refused to believe it. Thinking of this, she began to scan Madame Zhao. She must have evidence of something since she wanted to report to the Emperor. Otherwise, how else would she plead for help? Sure enough, there was a small pocket sewn on the inside of Madame Zhao's undergarment. There was a folded piece of paper inside. She immediately stored it in her interspace. Otherwise, it would definitely be destroyed if it were discovered. Zhu Ying took the opportunity to go to the toilet and entered her interspace. She quickly browsed through the evidence that Madame Zhao had written. She did not expect that this was evidence of Lord Zhao helping the first prince with various corruptions and crimes. One of the things that shocked her the most was killing officials with exemplary political achievements and then replacing them with someone else. Just like Lord Sunday, Lord Zhao's residence was basically filled with the first prince's people. No wonder the servants of the Zhao residence dared to be so arrogant. There were also some cases of corruption and seizing the property of those who refused to collaborate. This was simply appalling. No, she couldn't let Madame Zhao die. Otherwise, it would be challenging to prove many of their crimes. Thinking of this, Zhu Ying immediately left the room and found Madame Zhao through her divine sense. She was imprisoned in a storeroom, which was filled with porcelain ornaments. Knowing Madame Zhao was not in danger for the time being, Zhu Ying went to look for Miss Zhao. Miss Zhao got lucky. She found a set of clothes that looked old and torn. After wearing it, she seemed to have aged by more than 10 years. Miss Zhao was now heading into a tunnel. As for where it led to, Zhu Ying couldn't tell as it was dark and long inside. However, it was enough to know that she was fine. As Zhu Ying walked back, she looked at the emperor. He was currently with Jiyu Chongrui, emphasizing how to spread the new farming methods to the officials outside quickly. While the emperor was drinking tea, Zhu Ying used the voice of Mother God to send a message to him. The emperor was stunned. When he remembered the 2 times Mother God had entered his dream, his hands couldn't help but tremble, and he almost spilled the tea in his hands. He got up and said, "You guys continue discussing. I'll be back soon." After saying that, he called Eunuch Li to the side hall and asked him to guard the entrance. The emperor knelt and whispered, "Mother God, what advice do you have?" Zhu Ying didn't reply. Instead, she just sent the piece of paper over through her interspace. The emperor saw the paper heart floating in his hand and opened it to read. The more he read, the more ashen his face became. In the end, he angrily punched the ground. Chapter 587 Royal Family Banquet, 8. Zhu Ying saw that the emperor had finished reading and then told him about the situation of Madame Zhao and her daughter and where they were now. She stayed silent once she finished what she had to say. The emperor immediately kowtowed and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Mother God." After saying that, he stood up and kept the evidence. Then, he asked Eunuch Li to bring all the officials to the banquet. He went to find Xiao Heng and personally went to Madame Zhao. Of course, the Empress people were also imprisoned on the spot. He later also called for Miss Zhao to come over. After handing them over to Xiao Heng, he returned to the banquet. When Zhu Ying returned, Mingyu and Jiyu Wanning were back in their seats. Seeing her return, they asked curiously, "Why did they look for you just now?" Zhu Ying didn't hide, and she told them the reason for their visit. Of course, she only told them that Madame Zhao wanted to join forces with her to deal with Lord Zhao. As for the other stuff she found by herself, she didn't mention it one bit. "You didn't agree, did you?" Jiyu Wanning asked. "I'm not stupid. To put it bluntly, she's planning to use me. Of course, I won't be stupid enough to let her take advantage of that. Besides, when she held power back then, she didn't stop Zhao Xiaoying from snatching Zi's husband. Why should I help her now? It's right for you to reject her. To be honest, she's just a backstabber. Back then, she enjoyed everything with a clear conscience. Now that it's her turn to fall from grace, she wanted to turn around and stab her husband. Believe it or not, if you agree, she will blame you if anything happens in the future." Zhu Ying nodded in agreement. At this time, Eunuch Li had already walked in with a group of officials. However, they did not disperse immediately. After discussing something for a while, they went back to their seats. Mingyu immediately got up and said, "All right, I have to go back immediately." She returned to her seat in King An's imperial residence. Jiyu Chongrui sat down and asked, "Are you guys okay? Did you get bullied?" "Don't worry. With Princess Mingyu around, no one will dare to cause trouble for us." "Yeah, don't worry, cousin. We're fine. It must be hard on you to deal with so many people. Hurry up and drink some tea." After Jiyu Wanning finished speaking, she took a teacup and poured him some tea. "Thank you." Jiyu Chongrui thanked her and continued, "Actually, it's nothing much. It's just letting them know about some new farming techniques. I will organize it into a booklet later. When the time comes, everyone will have a copy, so I don't have to explain it to them individually. This is a good idea. If it works, it can be passed down from generation to generation. I'll help you with that later. All right, let's write together." Jiyu Wanning looked at them and was envious of their relationship, but she knew it would never happen to her. She could only hope that she could continue to get along with her husband in the future. Soon, the Emperor, Empress, and Empress Dowager rushed over. After bowing, everyone sat down, and the Emperor quickly announced, "We've discussed most of what we need to do before this. When you return, remember to write a proposal into a memorial and submit it to me. Remember, Everyone only has 2 missions this year. First, promote food as soon as possible so that starving isn't a thing as soon as possible. Secondly, encourage the birth of children. Women who were not married at the age of 18 could be forced to marry. We will obey. Everyone immediately replied. All right, the banquet has started. Everyone, have a good meal today and let us know how greenhouse vegetables taste. After the emperor finished speaking, he asked Eunuch Li to arrange for the dishes to be served. Chapter 588 The Emperor's Might. 1. Because today's banquet was mainly to taste the greenhouse dishes, all the dishes were relatively light. The oiliest was the fried eggplant. Fortunately, the main staple was fried pancakes, so everyone was more or less filled. When everyone was almost done eating, the emperor stood up and said, "Everyone, tell me, what do you think of the greenhouse vegetables? Relatively speaking, the vegetables' taste is slightly mild, but it's good enough that we could eat such fresh vegetables in the middle of winter." The Empress Dowager replied, "Indeed, we must plant more leafy vegetables in the hot spring manner in winter. Vegetables are too rare in the winter." King Xian echoed. With the 2 of them speaking out, everyone followed suit. Everyone praised the greenhouse vegetables to the heavens and wanted to buy more to satisfy their cravings. So let's spread the planting methods as soon as possible. You can still plant a batch when you return to your county. Maybe at most, it would be slightly young when it's time for harvest. The emperor looked at Jiyu Chungrui and added, "I would have to trouble Minister Jiyu to teach them more over the next 2 days and bring them around your manor. This is my duty and my honor. In addition, I plan to make a booklet teaching the planting techniques of the white potato and how to build a greenhouse. This way, this knowledge can be spread faster and wider." Good, good. All right, everyone, hurry up and get to work. When the time comes, I will find someone to help you print the booklets. The emperor quickly added, "It's getting late, so you all can leave the banquet anytime." After saying that, the emperor left. Zhu Jiuying was a bit anxious about the emperor's series of actions. Why didn't he say anything else except eating and working? It was not easy for her to seize an opportunity to make things difficult for Zhu Ying, but it slipped away just like that. King Kang noticed her abnormality and warned her, "Father isn't in a good mood today, so don't go looking for trouble. Otherwise, even I can't save you." "No, I just feel that today's banquet ended too quickly. That better be the case. Let's hurry back." King Kang stood up. After the guests left one after another, the emperor directly brought guards to imprison the empress in her palace. After the empress received the news, she looked at the emperor in disbelief and asked, "Your Highness, what did I do wrong? Why are you imprisoning me? You don't know. Think about it carefully." After the emperor finished speaking, he left the guards behind and brought her aides and Madame Zhao into the study to interrogate them. Madame Zhao didn't need to be interrogated, and she told the emperor everything she knew. She kowtowed and begged, "I know I'm guilty of my silence and should not have kept quiet all this time. But my children are really in the dark about this. Your Highness, I beg you to give them a way out. Do you know how King Hui and Lord Zhao communicate?" "Through a messenger pigeon, but I'm not clear about the specifics. I was never privy to the details. I hope what you said is true." The emperor nodded and took the empress aides. Because of Madame Zhao's confession, they also quickly confessed. To put it bluntly, the empress knew the emperor didn't favor her and wanted to bring in a beautiful young girl to help her maintain the emperor's favor. As for the rest, it was some other private matter. The emperor more or less knew about it, so there was no need to interrogate them further. He then commanded Xiao Heng to execute the aides. On the other side, Lord Zhao had just boarded his carriage when he was struck on the back of his neck and fainted. After everyone had left, Lord Zhao was brought directly to the royal study. The emperor looked at the unconscious Lord Zhao and asked the guard beside him, "Did any news of this leak?" Chapter 589 The Emperor's Might. 2. Not at the moment. Go bring some men to their residence and bring the eldest son of the Zhao family over. Roger that. The guard responded and turned to leave. Seeing this, Eunuch Li took a cup of cold water and splashed it on Lord Zhao's face. Lord Zhao woke up with a jolt. When he saw the emperor standing before him, he was deeply shocked. He quickly knelt and kowtowed. "Long live the emperor, all hail." "All right, I heard you loud and clear. But I'm sure you can't wait for me to die as soon as possible." When Lord Zhao heard this, he instantly broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly replied, "I wouldn't dare." "No, you're very daring." After the emperor said this, he pulled out the complaint Madame Zhao wrote and threw it in his face. After Lord Zhao took it, he hurriedly took a look. With just one glance, he felt his view darkening, and his mind blanked out. He fainted immediately. The emperor understood when he saw that what was written on it was 80% true. Thinking of this, he went up and kicked him. When Lord Zhao woke up, the emperor demanded seriously, "Tell me everything you've done all these years, and maybe I can give you a way out." Lord Zhao didn't feel relieved. Instead, he wanted to cry. Because he clearly knew that even if he confessed and the emperor did not kill him, the first prince and Marquis Dingan would not let him off either. In the end, he would still die. The emperor looked at his expression and knew what he was thinking. He sneered and questioned, "Do you think that I'm inferior to King Hui and that I can't even protect your family's lives?" "No. You only have one chance. I have to give an explanation to the families of those officials who died unjustly. Otherwise, I will execute your entire family." Lord Zhao completely wilted after hearing this. He wiped his tears and asked, "If I confess, can you spare my children? As long as they didn't participate, I'll spare their lives. I swear that they really don't know, and I never dare to let them know. So, tell me." To start, it was 10 years ago when I was promoted. After washing up, Ju Ying sat by the bed and applied hand cream as she sighed. "No wonder everyone is fighting to the death for that chair under the emperor's butt. That power can be useful when it needs to. From what you're saying, something must have happened." Jiyu Chungrui put down his book, turned around, and put his arm around her shoulder. "Of course, and it's a big deal. It's much bigger than Yang Shicheng's corruption." Ju Ying replied mysteriously. Jiyu Chungrui smiled and kissed her deeply on the lips. "You should tell me now." "Maybe, but I want to drink a bowl of white fungus lotus seed soup tonight." "No problem, leave it to me." Ju Ying leaned into his arms and whispered about how Madame Zhao had found her and how Lord Zhao had confessed. Jiyu Chungrui gasped after hearing that. If he remembers correctly, 10 to 12 counties were under Lord Zhao's influence. In other words, they had killed 3 to 4 7th-grade county magistrates with outstanding achievements. Lord Zhao wouldn't be the only one falling this time. The first prince would probably be gone as well. He hugged her and kissed her. "Fortunately, you didn't openly agree to cooperate with Madame Zhao today. Otherwise, we would have been dragged into the mud by her. I'm not stupid. If it weren't for the fact that what happened was so major, I wouldn't have bothered. Yes, my wife is the smartest." Chapter 590 Betrothal 1. The couple entered Ju Ying's interspace. While she checked out the various places she usually checked, she paid special attention to the officials there this time. She realized that quite a number of people had been impersonated, even King Kang had begun to do similar things. She couldn't help but sigh. It seems that King Rui is the most stupid. However, no matter how much she lamented, she could not take action directly. Instead, she collected a list of names and especially focused on the 2 disguise artists. Then, through her interspace, she handed it to the emperor. The next day, when the emperor saw the name list, he felt his scalp go numb and almost fainted. At the same time, the emperor also realized that they couldn't deal with this matter openly. Otherwise, the royal family would lose the people's faith. At the thought of this, a wave of fatigue washed over him. He removed King Hui and King Kang from the list of heirs, as such unscrupulous behavior definitely shouldn't inherit the throne. Otherwise, the Yang family's empire would be destroyed in his hands. After pondering for a while, he changed his way of handling Lord Zhao. He made him stay in the capital to help Jiyu Chungrui promote greenhouses and sweet potatoes. The emperor chose another trusted aide for Kaiyang Prefecture. At the same time, he gave them a hidden mission, which was to find an opportunity in private to get rid of those spies openly and pull those who could be roped in. Over the next 3 days, The emperor continuously sent his people to various places and began to slowly pull out the nails his sons had embedded. Jiyu Chungrui was also getting busy showing the local officials around the greenhouses. He also had his hands full selling the greenhouse vegetables to them. He came to the realization that their supply wouldn't be able to cope with demand, so he took some vegetables out of Ju Ying's interspace and supplied them to the palace. Of course, this purchase would no longer go through the account books. The first month of the new year ended as the couple slogged through their work. On the second day of February, King Rui personally brought butler Feng and the official media to present his betrothal gift to Jiyu Wanning. Jiyu Chungrui, waiting at home, stepped forward and cupped his fists to welcome them into the residence. After entering the house, he called for King Rui to sit down and said, "Your Highness, I am grateful that you are willing to personally come." King Rui glanced at him and replied, "In marrying my wife. I assent that what I should do?" Jiyu Chungrui nodded. "I guess I'll be your brother-in-law soon." "Yeah, but don't expect me to call you big brother. It's fine. Just admitting it in your heart is enough." "Oh right, I heard from my cousin that you planted another kind of crop called red sweet potato. What's the difference between it and the white sweet potatoes?" "Ah, it was a crop bequeathed to me when I went to the Mother God Temple for prayers. It looks like a white potato, but it's relatively small. The core is red and especially sweet. It's a crop that needs more water, but it's very delicious when roasted." King Rui nodded after hearing this. "Leave some seeds for me later. The white potatoes are too dry sometimes. I'll just give you the crops when they mature." "Alright, I don't need too much. 1 acre of seedlings is enough." "Understood. I'll hand it over to Uncle Feng." At this moment, Jiyu Wanning came in with a pot of tea and bowed. "Greetings, Your Highness, brother cousin. No need to be so polite." King Rui nodded. He looked at Jiyu Wanning and realized she had rosier cheeks than when she was in the Yang family. Her skin was fair and glowing. It was obvious that she was living quite well here. He asked, "Do you have any special requirements for the furnishings in your room?" "No incense and no flowers," Jiyu Wanning answered with a red face. King Rui looked at her in surprise and knew she was being cautious. He then nodded and replied, "Got it. Thank you, Your Highness. You guys continue chatting while I'll go prepare lunch." Yang Wanning politely greeted the matchmaker sitting beside her, then turned around and left. Chapter 591 Betrothal 2. Outside, Ju Ying counted the dowry with Mrs. Chiu, Mrs. Sun, Kuehua, and Shiju. After finishing, she looked up at Butler Feng and said, "Uncle Feng, I've finished counting." I'm relieved. "You guys go ahead. I'll go back now." After Butler Feng finished speaking, he turned around and was about to leave. Ju Ying quickly stopped him. "Wait. You've helped us a lot before. It's not easy for you to come to visit us, especially on such a joyous occasion. How can you leave?" "But no buts. As long as no one dies, there's nothing more urgent than this. It's the same if you go back early after having a meal." After saying that, Ju Ying directly helped him into the house. She said to Jiyu Chungrui, "Rui, I'm leaving Uncle Feng with you. I'm going to cook now." "Okay, remember to make some shredded radish salad." Jiyu Chungrui stood up and said, "Got it." Ju Ying turned around and left after that. Jiyu Chungrui guided Uncle Feng to sit and poured him a glass of water. Uncle Feng looked at King Rui with a troubled expression. Seeing this, King Rui nodded and said, "Do stay, Uncle Feng. It's rare for you to get a chance to taste Mrs. Gus cooking." "All right." Uncle Feng sat down with a clear conscience. Jiyu Chungrui said, "If Your Highness likes to eat Ying's dishes, you can come over more often in the future. She has nothing much to do now and is quite free." "I will." King Rui nodded. However, the problem wasn't whether Ju Ying was busy or not. He's getting busy, and it was inconvenient for him to come. After Ju Ying entered the kitchen, she saw that Jiyu Wanning was trying her best to slice the radish. She went forward and said, "You don't have to be so careful. It's much easier to shred the radish after you flatten one side. In addition, when pressing the ingredients with your left hand, your fingers must dig deeper, or else it would be easy to cut it. After saying that, she demonstrated it to Gu Warning again. After ensuring she learned it, she quickly peeled the outer skin and shredded it. Ju Ying then soaked it in light salt water. She walked to Biaozi, who was processing the fish, and said, "Brother Biaozi, I'll be cooking today, so you watch carefully from the side. If you can't remember anything, write it down in your notebook. When the restaurant opened, these dishes would be on the menu." "All right, I will definitely study hard." Biaozi nodded solemnly. At the same time, he was very grateful to Ju Ying. He knew that in this era, all craftsmanship was passed down to the younger generation. Even teachers were unwilling to teach their apprentices anything. There were very few people like Ju Ying who didn't hide anything. Biaozi knew he couldn't miss this opportunity. After all the ingredients were prepared, Ju Ying explained to him step by step how to cook these dishes, especially how he should control the flames. Gu Warning also took a notebook and listened earnestly. Ju Ying made a total of 10 dishes and 1 soup, which symbolized perfection. They were squirrel mandarin fish, steamed pork with rice noodles, 8 treasures chicken, roasted lamb chop, mushroom and pork, braised eggplant, mushroom with rapeseed, sweet and sour radishes, beef sauce, and fried salted peanut. The soup to end it all was duck soup. As for the carbs, Gu Warning made scallion pancakes, meat pies, vegetable rolls, and pumpkin biscuits. However, because there weren't many guests and they had to be divided into 2 tables for men and women, the amount of food cooked wasn't too much. On the matchmaker's side, it was mainly Ju Ying, Mrs. Mother Chiu, and Hai Tang. As for the men's table, it was Jiyu Chungrui and Jiyu Chenglin who had rushed over. After the meal and sending off the satisfied King Rui and the rest, Ju Ying gave the list of betrothal gifts to Jiyu Warning and said, "You and Chenglin discuss how you'll arrange these betrothal gifts. The 2 of us won't interfere." Chapter 592 Additional Dowry. Gu Warning shook her head. "Since we've moved in, we've always treated you as family. You can make the arrangements. We have no objections." Yes, you guys can make the arrangements," Jiyu Chenglin echoed. The destruction of the young residents made him clearly realize the importance of Jiyu Chungrui and his wife to them. If they hadn't been helping them all along, even if they had broken off their ties with the Yang family, their fate wouldn't have been any better than Yang Chengsen's. At the very least, Yang Chenglin would be implicated and never be able to participate in the imperial examination again. Jiyu Chungrui smiled and handed the list to Yang Chenglin. "Pick 3 things you like and leave them as a memento." Yang Chenglin was surprised by that offer. He glanced at the list and picked out a jade pendant, an inkstone, and a painting. Jiyu Chungrui nodded. After picking out a wooden eagle ornament, he returned it to Ju Ying. "All right, I've gathered all 66 sets of dowry for Warning. The rest would be left for Chenglin when he marries. If there's any extra, it's fine too." "All right." Ju Ying took it and looked at Mrs. Sunday. "Mrs. Sun, please help me out here. This is my first time preparing a dowry, so I'm afraid I'll make a mistake." "Yes, madam." Mrs. Sun immediately nodded. At the same time, she was very impressed with the couple. They returned a huge amount of betrothal gifts without blinking. It was rare to meet such selfless people. In the afternoon, before the betrothal gifts were stored in the warehouse, Ju Ying and Mrs. Sun brought some people and changed the 30 boxes of betrothal gifts into 25 sets of dowry, excluding the food and the ones picked out. In addition to the 40 boxes of dowry they had prepared previously, they sealed the 66 boxes and got them ready for transportation. In the evening, Ju Ying and Jiyu Chungrui discussed for a while and decided to personally gift 6 sets of dowry to Jiyu Warning. 2 pounds of bird's nest, 100-year-old ginseng, some cloth, a tea set, a box of pearls, and a full set of soap and rouge powder that Jiyu Chungrui had personally made. Although they did not spend a tael of silver, these items cost at least 10,000 taels of silver. They did not expect that on the morning before the wedding, the Liu and Yarrow families, who had not shown their faces all this time, would come and send 2 sets of dowry each. When Ju Ying found out they were Mrs. Yarrow's and Mrs. Liu's sisters-in-law, she immediately invited them in and said, "Aunties, please take a seat. What tea do you like? Anything is fine. We're not picky." Aunt Yarrow replied. Ju Ying sized up the two of them. Seeing that they looked pale and thin, she knew their lives were not good. She made a cup of rose tea for each and said, "Drink a cup of rose tea. It's good for a woman's health." "Thank you." The two of them took the tea and thanked Ju Ying. Ju Ying saw they were a little uneasy, so she asked, "Aunties, how are your families?" "It's all right, neither good nor bad." Aunt Liu replied. "Although we were implicated in the beginning, we're fine now. Moreover, we've benefited a lot from you guys returning." Aunt Yarrow smiled and replied. "Is it because the Jiyu family was exiled back then?" "Yes, but it's only for a period of time." The two women explained the situation at home in detail. Ju Ying also learned that the two families were actually affiliated with the Jiyu family back then. With the fall of the Jiyu family, the lives of the two families were naturally affected for the worse. However, the Yarrow family's son, who was an official in the court, was timid and cautious. After being demoted by 2 grades, he was untouched overall. Now, because of Jiyu Chengru's arrival, he was restored to his original position and became a 4th grade official in the Ministry of Rights. Chapter 593 Chicken Soup for the Soul. The Liu family was a merchant family, so their relationship with the Jiyu family was close. Therefore, they were scrutinized even more severely and only had 10% of the family property left compared to their peak. However, their house, 2 manors, and a shop still existed. It was not a problem to maintain the family's livelihood. After chatting for a while, Aunt Liu said hesitantly, "I heard that Lord Jiyu is promoting greenhouse vegetables now. I wonder if we ordinary merchants can grow them?" "Of course. If you want to plant some, send a child who can endure hardship and let him help and learn in our manor. He can also explore and learn while helping out. Otherwise, you might not be able to grow these vegetables just by hearing instructions." "That's great. May I know where the manor is?" "Get someone to come over early in the morning the day after tomorrow, and Chung Rue will bring him over." "All right, sorry for troubling you. We'll take our leave now. If you're free, drop by any time." After Ju Ying finished speaking, she sent them out. At the same time, she gave them a piece of pork and a piece of beef. After they left, Ju Ying took a look at the things they had prepared. The Yarrow family gave a set of gold jewelry and 2 batches of good fabric. The Liu family gave a pair of jade pendants, 1 purple and 1 blue, and 2 sets of bedding with good embroidery. Jiyu Wanning walked over and looked at the things on the ground. "Cousin-in-law, didn't you say that Mrs. Yarrow and Mrs. Liu didn't treat you well before? Why did you accept their family's gifts?" In this world, there are only 2 kinds of relationships between people. One is a blood-related relationship, and the other is a relationship of mutual benefit. However, your blood-related relationship is shallow, so you don't have many relatives that you can use. Therefore, you have to rely on benefits to make some connections. You have to remember that no matter what kind of relationship it is, it has to be respectful and mutually beneficial. Don't blindly take, and don't blindly give. Otherwise, the relationship won't last long. Now that the 2 families have extended an olive branch, we'll accept it. As for whether we can continue to get along in the future, it depends on our cooperation. Just remember to keep some things to yourself and not tell others everything." Jiyu Wanning nodded thoughtfully and asked, "What is the relationship between husband and wife?" "Husband and wife? A couple's relationship is the most complicated of all relationships. When you can trust each other, respect each other, understand each other, and like each other, then you will be closest to each other. But if you don't even have the basic trust between the 2 of you, your husband is actually the furthest and most dangerous person to you. To put it bluntly, the relationship between your parents is actually more or less the latter. Yang Shicheng knows your mother quite well but doesn't love her. This is also the reason why your mother was killed. Trust, respect, understand, and love. It's easier said than done. But it's not difficult. As long as you 2 have no distracting thoughts, work hard together, and use your strength together, it's still possible. The only thing you must be afraid of is being hot-headed. Therefore, Women would rather marry someone who's not rich but loves and treasures them for the rest of their lives. It's way better than wanting to marry someone wealthy but ending up as withered grass after giving up everything. Of course, that's excluding those who love each other truly. Yang Wanning looked at her in astonishment and said, although these words are somewhat rebellious, they make sense. So remember them clearly. Don't let yourself get hurt. Can you tell if King Rui likes me? I can only remind you that whoever gets serious first will lose, Ju Ying said after seeing her nervousness. In other words, whoever falls in love with the other first will lose. Chapter 594 Marriage. Yang Wanning immediately recalled Mrs. Kui. Although she couldn't say Mrs. Kui loved Yang Shicheng, it was true that she had done too much for him. In the end, she lost her reputation and her life. Ju Ying saw that Yang Wanning had taken her words in and continued, King Rui is a good person. He won't make things difficult for you as long as you don't make a big mistake. Of course, I must remind you that you are a secondary consort. You have to handle your relationship with her well, or else the two of you, especially you, will not have a good time. How should I handle this? Respect. I don't need to say much, and you should understand. Your duty is to serve His Highness, and you should focus all your attention on him. Try your best to make him like you and adapt to your presence. To put it bluntly, whether your position is stable or not depends on His Highness, not any other woman. Just be extra careful to prevent yourself from being schemed against. The last thing is not to go overboard, not to interfere in things that should not be your business, and not to fight for things that never belong to you. As long as you do these three things, even if the primary consort comes looking for trouble with you, His Highness will still stand by your side. As Ju Ying said this, she suddenly remembered the fourth prince and his scheme. It seemed that she had to keep an eye on King Rui's residence. After chatting for a while longer, Yang Wanning returned to her courtyard with a heavy heart. Soon, it was Jiyu Wanning's wedding day. Early in the morning, Ju Ying got up and got busy. First, the Ministry of Rights people came over to bathe Jiyu Wanning and dress her up. She didn't expect that the person who would be blessing her was Madame Consorten. After dressing her up, she even gave Jiyu Wanning 1,000 taels of silver as her stash of money. After they were done with their work, it was time for others to gift additional dowries. To be honest, there weren't many others here. Other than some normal gifts, only Mingyu was wholeheartedly prepared for this. Mingyu alone added another 10 sets of dowries, which was quite a hefty sum. When it was almost time, King Rui also arrived. Since Jiyu Wanning did not have parents, only Chenglin was out to greet the groom and ask for a red packet. Jiyu Chungrui carried Jiyu Wanning in her carriage and sent her to King Rui's residence with her dowry and Jiyu Chenglin. After the bridal carriage had left, Ju Ying poured a basin of water outside, and it was over. After returning, she entertained everyone and chatted for a while. Next, it was time to start the banquet and entertain the people who came to gift additional dowries. After a meal, when most people had left, Madame Consorten found her and asked, Ying, do you still have some cucumbers? I do, but not much. Why don't I send it to you tomorrow? Madame Consorten shook her head and whispered, just give me as much as you have. My stomach hasn't been good recently, so I just want to eat something fresh to reduce the heat. Ju Ying was stunned when she heard that. Wasn't this constipation? She quickly asked, have you eaten any medicine? You shouldn't delay this for too long. Madame Consorten shook her head and grimaced. I don't like to drink that medicine. It's too bitter. All right then, please wait a moment, I'll get them for you. Ju Ying turned around and went to the kitchen. However, there were only 2 cucumbers left in the kitchen. Fortunately, the servants had gone for lunch, so Ju Ying could take out 5 more cucumbers from her interspace and hand them to Madame Consort Ans Nanny. After sending Madame Consorten off, Ju Ying returned to her room and laid down. She did not sleep. Instead, she spread out her divine senses toward King Rui's residence. At this time, the wedding banquet was almost over, so Ju Ying went to the bride and groom's chamber. Chapter 595 Discovery. Mingyu was having her meal with Jiyu Wanning. The two of them were talking and laughing, and it was a harmonious scene. Ju Ying took a bird's-eye view of the entire residence. Finally, her gaze landed on Qiao Lanlan, who was busy making soup in the kitchen. She thought Qiao Lanlan looked familiar, but she couldn't recognize her because she was obviously fatter than before. Just as she was about to look away, she suddenly saw Qiao Lanlan sneakily take out a packet of powder from her waist and pour it into the soup. After mixing it well, she ladled the soup into a bowl and turned around to shout, "Sister Qingdao, the sea cucumber and chicken soup is ready." Qingdao immediately walked in and picked up the bowl. "Thank you, Sister Lan." She turned around and rushed forward with the food tray. Just as Ju Ying was about to follow up, she suddenly saw Qiao Lanlan's sinister smile. However, it quickly disappeared, and Qiao Lanlan got busy again. Could she be the spy King Kang buried in King Rui's residence? Ju Ying muttered. After memorizing her appearance, she chased after Qingdao. She happened to see her walking into the main courtyard. In the main courtyard, besides Sun Miaoke, there were also the Empress Dowager, Consort Xian, and a few elders from the royal family. Who is she trying to harm? Ju Ying couldn't understand her target, and she couldn't be bothered to. Just as Qingdao entered the room, Ju Ying deliberately poked her leg with her divine sense. Qingdao tripped on the door sill and dropped the food tray in her hand to the ground, spilling the chicken and sea cucumber soup on the ground. Qingdao was so frightened that her face immediately turned pale. She immediately knelt and said, "Mistress, please punish me." Sun Miaoke was about to speak when the Empress Dowager near the entrance stopped her and said, "All right, hurry up and clean it up." The Empress Dowager saw clearly that Qingdao tripped because she couldn't raise her leg over the door sill. Therefore, the Empress Dowager assumed Qingdao was too tired and chose not to make a scene on this auspicious day. After Qingdao finished cleaning up and threw the broken bowl into the trash, Ju Ying took some soup into her interspace. She stared at them for a while more. After making sure that Qiao Lanlan did not strike again, she retreated. After entering her interspace at night, Ju Ying briefly explained what happened and handed the samples to Jiyu Chungrui. "Rui, do a test and see what that powder was." "All right, leave it to me. However, you have to feed those livestock on the grasslands." "No problem." Ju Ying agreed and turned around, heading to the grassland to get busy. After she was done, she picked out the ones ready for slaughter and rushed to the foot of the mountain. She butchered them and stored the meat in her warehouse. She left a fat goose behind and brought it into the villa to make a stew. As soon as the stew was ready, Jiyu Chungrui walked down with a tired expression and asked, "It smells so good. What delicious food did you make this time?" "I made a goose stew." "Let's eat a bowl before sleeping." Ju Ying looked at the list in his hand and asked curiously, "Did you find anything?" "Yeah. It's just contraceptive medicine, but in powder form." "Just contraceptive medicine?" "Yes, I suspect that Sun Miaoke has been drinking this all this time. Otherwise, why hasn't there been news of pregnancy since the two of them are healthy?" "Really?" "Yes, having children is also a very important thing in the competition for the throne." "That's true. It seems like King Kang is trying to cut King Rui's line to the throne." "Yeah. Now that Wanning has entered his residence, I'm afraid there will be big movements soon. How should we remind King Rui?" "Don't you know that scares me?" "I'm sorry. I was too excited." Jiyu Chungrui grabbed her cute fist and patted her back. "Fine, what were you talking about?" "I remember the person who drugged the soup." "Who is she?" "Do you still remember Qiao Lanlan?" "Qiao Lanlan?" Ju Ying paused for a moment before she teased, "It's that rotten peach blossom of yours, right?" "Yes, but she's put on a lot of weight. In addition, I hadn't seen her for a few years, and that's why I couldn't recognize her. But she's still the same person if you look closely." After Ju Ying heard this, she suddenly remembered that 7th Su had promised to save Qiao Lanlan back then. She lamented, "Power and connections are annoying. Back then, when Qiao Lanlan was banished, I guess King Kang was able to save her. As expected in a backwater era. As long as you bribe someone to report her death, it'll be easy to fish her out of her exile. It looks like we have to remind King Rui. Otherwise, Something bad might happen. Chapter 597. Informing them. You'd better think of a method to inform him then. Don't worry, I will say that I met her yesterday when I went to the toilet and recognized her as Xiao Lan Lan. As for the rest, I don't think I need to say anything more. Once he has eyes on Xiao Lan Lan, she could forget about doing anything bad. It's fine as long as you know what you're doing. Oh right, remember to come back for lunch after morning court. Don't forget that the Liu family will be sending someone over. Aye, all right. Oh right, take some time to sort out the greenhouse and potato planting instructions. I'll summarize them and print them out as soon as possible. Okay, leave that to me. It's still early. You should sleep a little longer. Jiyu Chungrui got up and started to put on his clothes. After he left, Juying thought she couldn't fall asleep, but drowsiness soon washed over her. By the time she woke up, it was already late in the morning. After breakfast, she went to the study room and took out the books she had collected in her previous life. She began to summarize them seriously. On the other end, after Jiyu Chungrui left the morning court, he remembered that King Rui wasn't attending because of his marriage. After lunch, he rushed to the manor and found Zhu Huaiming. He told him about Xiao Lan Lan and said, "We have to let His Highness investigate her as soon as possible. If she's really Xiao Lan Lan, then his residence might be in danger." Zhu Huaiming quickly remembered who Xiao Lan Lan was. He was the one who oversaw the Qiao family's case back then. Most importantly, the Qiao family almost took his life, so it was difficult for him to forget even if he wanted to. He never expected someone to have escaped their exile. He knew he had to investigate this properly. He quickly nodded and replied, "I'll remember this. I'll personally inform His Highness." "All right, I'll leave this to you. I have to go to my manor soon," Jiyu Chungrui said as he went straight home. After Zhu Huaiming left, he went straight to King Rui's residence. He was also hoping there would be some good food waiting for him. As expected, King Rui was eating a bowl of sea cucumber and millet porridge when he arrived. On the side were braised beef, eggs, vegetables, and a plate of rolls. Seeing him enter, King Rui raised his head and asked in surprise, "Why are you here so early in the morning?" Zhu Huaiming sat opposite him and smiled. "I knew you'd definitely have a good meal today, so I specially came over to get a free meal." King Rui glanced at him indifferently and asked the servants to serve him a bowl, too. It was not until they were done eating and the servants had left that he asked, "Tell me, what's the matter? What's so urgent?" "No, I'm just uneasy." Chapter 598. Keeping tabs. Butler Feng didn't speak directly. Instead, he looked at Mrs. Sun and the others. Seeing this, Jiyu Wanning waved them out. Butler Feng didn't hide anything after that. He explained the matter and said, "I don't know what was added to this chicken soup, but it can't be drunk. Please think of a way to dispose of it and try to avoid making a fuss. We'll deal with her as soon as possible." Jiyu Wanning panicked momentarily, but she immediately calmed down and asked, "What about the other dishes?" Butler Feng noticed her steadiness and nodded with satisfaction. "The rest are fine. Only the chicken soup was spiked. Remember not to make a sound." Although the secondary consort was not the main wife, she still played a leading role. If something happened to the princess consort, she would have to take over, so having a steady personality was important. So far, Uncle Feng was quite satisfied with her attitude. "All right, I'll remember it. Please enjoy the rest of your meal." Uncle Feng responded, turned around, and walked out in a hurry. After he left, Jiyu Wanning looked at the chicken soup on the table with a regretful expression, but she did not continue to drink it. She pulled 2 strands of hair out and threw them into the chicken soup. Once Mrs. Sun returned, Jiyu Wanning refused to drink the chicken soup because she had found her hair and asked her to deal with it. When Mother Sun saw this, she said, "All right, leave it to me. I will drink it later." "Don't. There's hair in the soup, so who knows if there's anything else. It's better to be careful. Could it be that the princess consort deliberately arranged this?" "No. That would be too impatient of her. There's the risk of His Highness investigating." But what if? I don't think so. At most, this will just disgust me and won't have any effect. It will also just put me on alert. Just in case, I will prepare a silver needle later. After speaking, Mrs. Sun took the chicken soup away and disposed of it. Over the following half a month, Uncle Feng discovered that Xiao Lanlan would tamper with the soup of whoever His Highness had rested with the night before. Uncle Feng got someone to steal some medicine and planned to find someone to identify it. He ended up going to Jiyu Chungrui through Zhu Huiming's recommendation. Jiyu Chungrui did not reject the request. After testing it and confirming it was the same contraceptive medicine, he replied to Uncle Feng. After Uncle Feng received the news, he was extremely furious. This was related to King Rui's descendant, so he quickly informed him about it. When King Rui found out, his face was full of surprise. He could not figure out the other party's true intentions after that. So, he asked Uncle Feng to continue his surveillance. On the day Xiao Lanlan's medicine was finished, Xiao Lanlan found the servant she reported to and asked, "The medicine is used up again. What's the meaning of this? It's been so long, but the higher-ups still have yet to make a final decision. Am I going to continue like this? I'll definitely be exposed if this drags on. I'll report this matter to the higher-ups as soon as possible. You head back for now." The servant turned around and left quickly. Xiao Lanlan had no choice but to leave empty-handed. They both didn't notice a figure quietly following the servant until he returned to the dormitory to sleep. Soon, Uncle Feng received the news and immediately blamed himself. He did not expect that there would be more than one spy in the residence he was managing. How could he endure this? He said to the person, "Continue to monitor them. You two brothers, keep an eye on that servant and see who he contacts tomorrow. Remember, you are not allowed to alert them." "I understand." The person replied and turned to leave. Chapter 599. Make a move. The next day, in the afternoon, someone returned with a confirmation. After listening to it, Uncle Feng asked gravely, "Are you sure you didn't see it wrongly?" "I'm sure, but I didn't approach them as I feared being discovered. I didn't hear what they were saying." "All right, continue watching them," Uncle Feng said solemnly. At the same time, he knew it was within expectations. After all, a prince could not avoid these schemes. When King Rui returned that evening, Uncle Feng told him about this. "Your Highness, we found another servant last night through that woman. Today, the servant boy went out to get more medicine. The person who met him was 7th young Master Su's personal attendant. It looks like Jiyu Chungrui didn't get it wrong. That woman is indeed Xiao Lanlan." King Rui muttered and then asked, "They're still meeting after dinner tonight, right?" "Yes, has handing over more medicine. When the time comes, let's go together and see what we can get out of them this time." "Yes, I will arrange for it now." After Butler Feng finished speaking, he turned around and left. King Rui went silent before muttering, "It seems that none of you can wait any longer. Fine, I will play with you." Xiao Lanlan finished her meal at night and again looked for the servant. What did the higher-ups say this time? It's time to take action. Remember, only use it on the princess consort. Afterwards, push the blame onto the secondary consort and let them fight each other. The servant instructed her as he gave her a bag of medicine. Xiao Lanlan reluctantly took it and asked, "What about me? Am I going to lose my life? Why don't you dare to act now that things have really come to this? Don't forget that your family died at the hands of King Rui. Aren't you indirectly avenging your family?" Xiao Lanlan gritted her teeth and silently agreed to this. She then said unwillingly, "I just can't accept it. You promised me to deal with Jiyu Chungrui and his wife. It's been so long, and there's still no result. I want to see their tragic ending. I already told you, this matter can't be rushed." Jiyu Chungrui now had the technology to build greenhouses and grow sweet potatoes. He's at the height of his power and is highly appreciated by the emperor. If we strike now, wouldn't we be causing trouble for our master? But soon, he's going to print his knowledge into a booklet. Once that's done, it would be the day they die. Fine, I'll wait a little longer. What are you waiting for? If I'm not mistaken, the princess consort will stay at His Highness' place tonight. We'll act tomorrow. Don't worry, Master will definitely make them die with you. Qiao Lanlan finally nodded and said, all right, I hope you keep your word. Otherwise, I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Remember to act tomorrow. The servant reminded her once again and turned to leave. However, he had only taken 2 steps when Guard Chu's sword stopped him. When the servant saw this, he knew that he had been exposed. He was shocked and quickly turned around to run into a tree. Qiao Lanlan panicked when she saw this. But a large sword was placed on her neck before she could run. The servant was also quickly pressed to the ground by Guard Chu. Take him to the dungeon. After King Rui finished speaking, he turned around and stepped into the dungeon. When the servant saw King Rui, he knew he had no chance of survival. He opened his mouth and was about to bite his tongue to commit suicide. However, he was struck unconscious by Guard Chu's palm and dragged directly into the dungeon. After entering, he immediately gave the 2 of them a muscle relaxant and began interrogating them. Because King Rui knew who their master was, Qiao Lanlan quickly confessed that the medicine she had received this time was intended for sterilization. Chapter 600 Qiao Lanlan's death. The servant shouted angrily, ungrateful bitch, you ingrate. Master saved you and gave you a chance to take revenge, yet this is how you repay him. You saved me. Don't forget, it was your master who used our Qiao family first. Otherwise, I would still be the eldest daughter of the Qiao family. Now, you're ordering me around and making me wait on people in the kitchen full of oil and smoke. Is this your definition of saving me? Qiao Lanlan shouted angrily. But master did save your life. Aren't you trying to kill me now? The servant didn't know how to respond to that statement. Seeing this, King Rui looked at Qiao Lanlan in surprise. He didn't expect her not to know that old Master Qiao had sided with the first prince. However, this was fine. It would be better to focus their attention on the 4th prince. They would be able to spill more secrets this way. He looked at Qiao Lanlan and said, if he doesn't want to tell me, why don't you tell me? Tell me everything you know. I'll give you a quick death and a grand burial. Qiao Lanlan looked at him in surprise and asked, are you lying to me? Is there a need for me to lie to a dying person like you? Qiao Lanlan revealed everything when she heard that. However, 7th Su no longer valued her after her elder brother died. Otherwise, he would not have let her be a maid at King Rui's residence. Therefore, she knew very little. She did, however, mention a piece of useful information. The famous brothel in the capital, Yixiang Courtyard, was the property of 7th Su. The crime of running a brothel was no lighter than the crime of dabbling in the loan shark business. Moreover, this was the largest brothel in the capital. This was very advantageous leverage. Is there anything else? King Rui asked again. Qiao Lanlan shook her head. King Rui then looked at the servant. This is your last chance, or I'll kill your entire family. I heard that it's a pity that your twins would have to die at only 8 months old. Uncle Feng said as he took out a pair of small silver locks with bells. When the servant saw the thing in his hand, his face was filled with disbelief. He thought he had hidden his identity very well but did not expect. At the thought of this, he suddenly felt that the remaining strength in his body had been sucked away. He looked at King Rui and asked, if I confess, can you spare my family? If you want them to live, you shouldn't be in a hurry to die. You should be thinking about how to cooperate with us and not let your master find out that something has happened to you. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to do anything, and your family would still die. The servant looked at him in shock and asked uncertainly, you want me to help you spy on them? King Rui nodded and ignored him after that. The servant hesitated for a long time before finally agreeing. Very good. I hope you can keep your promise. King Rui turned around and left after that. When Uncle Feng saw this, he was not in a hurry to take Qiao Lanlan's life. Instead, he locked her up in the dungeon. As for the servant boy, although he was released, he was secretly monitored. At the same time, his family was also under surveillance. On the afternoon of the second day, Qiao Lanlan's evil deeds were announced, and a bowl of poison sentenced her to death. She was then buried on a mountain in a thin coffin. In the afternoon, Jiyu Wanning was practicing in the yard when Sun Miaoke walked in and asked in surprise, "I didn't expect Sister Jiyu to know martial arts." "Greetings, Sister." Jiyu Wanning stopped and bowed. She stood up and replied, "It's not really martial arts, but when I was in the Yang residence, my cousin was worried about my safety, so he asked my cousin-in-law to teach me a few self-defense techniques. They could be used for self-defense during dangerous times, and secondly, it's great as a workout, so I kept practicing it." Chapter 601 Showing Goodwill. After Jiyu Wanning said that, she took a towel from Chunks's hand and wiped her sweat. "Sister, let's continue talking inside." "All right." Sun Miaoke followed her into the house. After she sat down, Jiyu Wanning personally poured a cup of tea for the two of them and handed her a glass. "Sister, please have some tea. Do take a seat. It's just the two of us, there's no need to be so polite." Sun Miaoke took the tea and said. At the same time, she was delighted with her attitude and hoped that it could continue. This way, she would at least have someone to talk to. "Thank you, sister." Jiyu Wanning sat down after she finished speaking. "I think you know the whole story of us being schemed against. I came here today with only one purpose. I hope that we can all be more vigilant in the future. If there were any suspicious people or things, I hope we could exchange information first. It's what I should do. We should also try our best to not cause any trouble for His Highness. Indeed, once the sea opens, His Highness will return to Dongyang. In the future, it's better for us to work together against the outside world." "Yes, I will remember it." The two of them chatted for a while more before Sun Miaoke left, satisfied. After she left, Chuanxi asked in confusion, "Young miss, what does Princess Consort mean by this?" "I'm a little confused. I feel that she is here to express goodwill. As long as we behave, she should not make things difficult for us." Mrs. Sun explained. She did not sense any malice from the Princess Consort either. Maybe she wants to find a helper. The imperial residence is filled with danger. If the two of us were to start quarreling, I'm afraid neither will end up well. Jiyu Wanning replied. Sun Miaoke would have to run such a large residence once His Highness left, and Jiyu Wanning assumed Sun Miaoke felt she was insufficient to face such a significant ordeal on her own. However, this was a good thing. She didn't want to fight either. As for His Highness' favor, it would depend on their own abilities. At night, the servant quietly left the residence and found Su Qing. "How did it go?" Su Qing quickly got up and asked. The servant shook his head. "I'm not sure. She only ate a little, and Qiao Lanlan was found out and executed. I've already heard about this. How was she discovered? Perhaps she had poured too much of the medicine, and the princess consort tasted the bitterness, so she investigated all the way and found Qiao Lanlan. Fool, can't she make a strong soup to cover it up? You didn't expose yourself, did you?" Su Qing asked. "I don't think so. Otherwise, they would have arrested me long ago. It's better to be careful. Don't look for me for the time being. When I need you, I'll send someone to look for you." Su Qing turned around and walked toward the back door. The servant also stood up and walked out. After coming out, he looked around and returned to King Rui's residence openly. Su Qing waited for him to leave before returning. After he left, he circled the street a few times. After ensuring no one was following the servant boy, he turned around and left. After he left, a figure walked out from the opposite side and quickly returned to the imperial residence. Zhu Ying, who had been paying attention to their residence, finally heaved a sigh of relief. In the blink of an eye, it was time for a minor scholar exam, and Jiyu Chenglin was successfully admitted. In order to let him relax, Zhu Ying took him to the manor for 3 days and taught him some farming knowledge. At this time, Jiyu Chenglin finally realized that farming was not just about farming. A lot of knowledge was involved, making him pay attention to agriculture-related knowledge. At the end of the month, King Kang married his wife. The 7th prince married his wife at the end of March, following the spring planting, particularly the planting of sweet potatoes. Chapter 602. Making things difficult. However, when the seventh prince married his wife, King Rui and Zhu Huiming had already left for Dongyang province. Therefore, during the banquet, King Kang saw that Jiyu Chungrui was getting increasingly popular and began extending an olive branch to him. However, it wasn't working. Instead, he brought up Princess Ping Yang, who had always supported him. Seeing this, Jiyu Chungrui didn't take the olive branch and instead laughed with him and said some words of gratitude to Princess Ping Yang. He started praising Princess Ping Yang, stating she was capable, fair, cared for him, and helped him marry a good wife. When King Kang saw this, he knew it would not be easy to win Jiyu Chungrui over quickly. Thus, he then followed suit, praising Princess Ping Yang. On the female side, Zhu Joying saw Zhu Ying glowing radiantly with happiness. In comparison, His Highness' attitude toward her only got colder. She was pissed. So, the flames of jealousy grew stronger and stronger. At this moment, Sun Miaoke suddenly retched, causing everyone to frown. The Empress Dowager thought of something and exclaimed happily, "Miaoke, are you pregnant?" Sun Miaoke was stunned for a moment after hearing this. It seemed to be true. However, even if it were true, it wasn't appropriate to spread it now, especially in front of the Empress. She could only shake her head and reply, "I think I caught a cold recently." The Empress Dowager didn't ask further after hearing this. Instead, she said, "You'd better be careful. After you return home, find a doctor to prescribe some medicine for you as soon as possible." "Yes, Imperial Grandmother. I will remember it." Sun Miaoke nodded. However, she still attracted the Empress' suspicious gaze, which made Sun Miaoke tremble in fear. It seemed that she would have to be more careful in the future. Zhu Joying was delighted by the opportunity. She looked at Zhu Ying and said, "Speaking of pregnancy, Mrs. Jiyu, you and Lord Jiyu have been married for more than 4 years, no? Why hasn't there been any good news?" When everyone heard that, they all looked at her. Right, Zhu Ying had been married for many years but did not have children yet. Suddenly, everyone started discussing whether she could not give birth. The Empress looked at Zhu Ying's bright and tender little face and knew she was living a comfortable life, which made her highly jealous. Thinking about the relationship between the two parties, since the Emperor did not allow her to touch Jiyu Chungrui, she could at least touch Zhu Ying. Thinking of this, she said, "This is a problem. If you can't give birth, you have to ask your husband to marry a concubine as soon as possible for the sake of having children. How about this? I have a distant niece who happens to be in the capital. Although her family is a little poor, she is delicate and pretty. I'll send her to your residence later to keep you company." Zhu Joying smiled and didn't say anything more. At this time, the Empress Dowager asked worriedly, "Zhu Ying, have you seen a doctor?" "Empress Dowager, my husband is a doctor, and am in good health. It was just that there had been constant disasters over the past few years, so we decided to delay having children. He was too busy after coming to the capital, so we have been delaying further." Zhu Ying turned her head and replied, "That's not an excuse. No matter how busy Lord Jiyu is, he can never be busier than the Emperor." The Empress quipped in, "That's different. No matter how busy the Emperor is, he rarely leaves the palace. But my husband mostly lives in his greenhouse. How can it be the same? So, you are rejecting my good intentions. There's no need for that. We'll discuss this matter between us, husband and wife. Lord Jiyu is a meritorious minister of our dynasty. I can't watch him without an heir. I will personally take care of this matter." "Empress!" the Empress Dowager coldly shouted. Chapter 603. Admonition. The Empress was startled by the Empress Dowager's shout. Looking at her gloomy face, she dared not make another sound. However, she was cursing the Empress Dowager internally. How dared the Empress Dowager humiliate her in front of so many people? Was she tired of living? Zhu Ying smiled and nodded at the Empress Dowager to show her gratitude. She then lowered her head and continued eating. When she caught a glimpse of Zhu Jiuying's disappointed expression from the corner of her eye, Zhu Ying knew what was going on. Zhu Jiuying was the one who started the dispute by claiming that she was infertile, and even the empress had been used by her. Thinking of this, she huffed coldly. Since Zhu Jiuying didn't want a good life and insisted on finding trouble, don't blame her for retaliating. After the banquet ended, Jiyu Chungrui told Zhu Ying about the fourth prince's olive branch on the way back and said, "I'm not sure what he'll do next. Be careful. I guess there is no tacit understanding between them, husband and wife." Zhu Ying retold how Zhu Jiuying made things difficult for her. "In the future, if King Kang comes looking for you again, you can use her as an excuse and let them fight each other. It's a good idea. Let's give them a taste of their own medicine and stir up the Kang imperial residence." On the other side, after returning to the palace, the Empress Dowager called the Empress into her palace and questioned her, "Do you still remember your identity as the Empress?" The Empress was shocked by that question before replying, "I thought you didn't remember. Although Jiyu Chungrui is an official of the Ming dynasty, he is not a slave of the Yang family. What right do you have to interfere in other people's family affairs? Even after she rejected you, you still tried to use your power to force her. How do you want everyone to think of you? How do you want them to think of our royal family? I know her mistake. I just didn't expect Zhu Ying to not give me any face at all, so I just got angry. But did you give them face? She initially rejected you tactfully, but you insisted on arranging a concubine for them. If it were you, would you be willing?" The Empress Dowager sighed and continued tiredly, "The position of Empress does have a lot of power, but it also has a lot of restrictions. This is because your words and actions represent the royal family's attitude. You must consider the bigger picture and not act recklessly based on your personality. Another thing is that being a mother to the country doesn't mean you're actually their mother, but it's a saying that you should be a role model for all the women and lead them well. I understand. Go back and think about this carefully. Your attitude will, at the very least, affect the prestige of the emperor and King Hui." After the Empress Dowager finished speaking, she waved her hand to let her out. After the empress had left, Nanny Liu asked, "Empress Dowager, isn't that too harsh? I'm afraid that the empress will hate you. She hates me already. Ever since she was grounded, she's always been moody. If she weren't scolding one person, she would be scolding another. Her temperament is really too different from Empress Ju's." The Empress Dowager sighed, "Unfortunate." After Nanny Liu heard this, her heart ached for the Empress Dowager. If she cared too much, the emperor would suspect her of taking control. If she cared too little, everything would look terrible on her. She was stuck in a dilemma. After the empress left the Empress Dowager's palace, she was so furious that her face turned green. This time, however, she did not flare up again. There was one sentence that she had taken to heart, which was that her attitude represented King Hui. She could not embarrass her son and needed to wait for him to return and discuss another big plan. Thinking of this, she asked her substitute nanny, "Nanny Yu, oh right, how long has it been since King Hui sent a letter?" Chapter 604 The reaction of all sides. It's been almost a month, and the river embankment should be almost completed. Perhaps His Highness is already on his way back. The Empress did not reply after hearing this. Instead, she said, "Pick out 2 young and beautiful palace maids. Mistress, this matter can't continue. Otherwise, the Empress Dowager, just prepare it. It will be useful sooner or later." "Yes." After hearing this, Nanny Yu did not try to persuade her. After sending the Empress back to the palace, she began to search for beautiful palace maids. After the Emperor learned of the Empress' foolish actions, his impression of her dropped again. It had even accumulated into disappointment. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't easily get rid of her, he would have done so long ago. However, Jiyu Chungrui had been married for more than 4 years and still had no children. He was concerned, and he was considering asking about it. He called Xiao Heng in and asked him to pass on the message to his trusted aide in the southwest. He wanted to win over the morale of the Southwest Army as soon as possible. On the other side, after returning to the mansion, Zhu Jiuying told King Kang about the dispute between Zhu Ying and the Empress. This Zhu Ying is really bold. Even we didn't dare to contradict the Empress, but she did so regardless. It can't be that there's really something wrong with her, and she became angry from embarrassment after being exposed. King Kang asked thoughtfully. If that were the case, he would know how to rope Jiyu Chungrui in. I can't say for sure. Zhu Jiuying didn't make any unnecessary remarks after seeing that he had considered her words. Your Highness, do you want to see Xin tonight? I still have some things to deal with. King Kang turned around and walked toward the study afterward. Zhu Jiuying smiled, then turned around and went back to her courtyard. After watching them from afar, Liu Yi, Hong Suji's maid, commented unhappily, Mistress, this secondary consort is always pestering His Highness. She's really shameless. Who cares? My status still maintains. As long as my father doesn't fall, His Highness won't dare to neglect me. After Hong Suji finished speaking, she turned around and returned to the main courtyard. She had seen the relationship between His Highness and Zhu Jiuying along the way and knew they were once a close couple. However, she found this was not the case after entering the residence. At the very least, His Highness was not as infatuated with Zhu Jiuying as she had imagined. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so obedient and gentle to Hong Suji. However, the more he acted like this, the more she dared not give him her heart. Otherwise, she would end up worse than Zhu Jiuying. She had to remain rational. At the very least, she would not implicate her family. Then, while King Kang was still patient with her, she had to bear a son as soon as possible to have a firm foothold in this residence. After Sun Miaoke left the 7th prince's residence, she didn't return directly to her place. Instead, she turned around and went to the Sun family's residence to find a doctor to take her pulse. She was really pregnant. After sending off the doctor, Mother Sun smiled and said, "That's great. Otherwise, your status will be in danger if Jiyu Wanning gives birth to the eldest son. It's just as dangerous now." Sun Miao replied nervously. "What's going on? Are you talking about Jiyu Wanning?" Mother Sun wanted to say something but hesitated. After spending time with her, Jiyu Wanning is a good person. She doesn't have any bad intentions. Sun Miaoke shook her head. But it's hard to say for the others. At that point, she told her mother about how the 4th prince had sent someone into the residence to give her and Jiyu Wanning contraceptives. She added, "Today, when everyone was happy about the news, only the Empress strangely looked at me. I think it won't be easy to give birth to this child successfully." Chapter 605 Counterattack. When Mother Sun heard that she was in a situation where there was a wolf in front and a tiger behind, she was worried for a moment. She suggested, "Why don't you come back and stay? As for the imperial residence, you can leave it to the butler to look after." "No, if I come back now, wouldn't that be telling everyone that I'm pregnant? I have to return and stall for time as much as possible. It would be fine once my pregnancy is stable. You must be careful. Don't worry, there's the butler around. I'll tell him to help me." "All right, remember to send a message if there's anything." After Mother Sun finished speaking, she asked someone to go to the kitchen to get some of Sun Miaoke's favorite snacks and then sent her back. After Zhu Ying finished bathing at night, she spread her divine sense to look at the Kang residence. At that moment, King Kang was caring for the baby while Zhu Jiuying was taking a bath. Seeing this, a wicked smile flashed across Zhu Ying's eyes. She poured 2 packets of fermented liquid from her storeroom into Zhu Jiuying's cup. Sure enough, Zhu Jiuying did not check it after showering and drank it all in one gulp. After that, Zhu Jiuying's stomach started to growl when they were both having a good time in bed. Soon, she started farting. King Kang's interest was immediately lost. He left with a look of disdain and went straight to the main courtyard. Zhu Jiuying was so angry that she screamed and broke the kettle and cups on the bed. However, she quickly lost her temper and went straight to the toilet. "Serves you right," Zhu Ying gloated. "This is just a warning. You won't be so lucky next time." As for tests, she was not afraid of getting discovered. With the current technology, Zhu Jiuying would never find any trace of fermented liquid. She could only admit that she was unlucky. What mischievous things have you done? Why are you smiling evilly? Ji Chungrui, who had finished washing up, walked over and asked curiously. Ju Ying did not hide it from him and told him about what she had done. Ji Chungrui was stunned for a moment before he smiled. I hope King Kang doesn't develop any psychological trauma from this. That will depend on his mental forte. Right. We should get busy, too. Ji Chungrui quickly lifted the blanket and crawled under the covers with her. The next day, after the morning court session, the emperor asked Ji Chungrui to stay and asked, I heard that the empress lost her composure at the banquet yesterday. Did it affect you and your wife badly? Not really. Then, you too. Do you want me to find a few beauties? Ji Chungrui quickly waved his hand and replied, no need. It's not that we can't make any. It's just that we don't want any babies at the moment. After this busy period, I will naturally have one when we settle down. Besides, the Jiyu family doesn't have any inheritance now. It's fine even if we don't have children. The emperor was startled when he heard this and asked, do you blame me? Ji Chungrui was stunned by the question. After understanding that he was referring to the family's exile, he shook his head. Not really. After all, the Jiyu family was at fault. You acted according to the law. The emperor saw that his eyes were clear and did not dodge his question. He smiled and asked, so, who do you think is most suitable to inherit the throne among the princes? This is your family matter, so I shouldn't say much. Family matters? Family matters it is. What kind of person do you think I should choose to inherit the throne? Ji Chungrui looked at him in surprise, not knowing what the emperor was trying to do. Therefore, he answered modestly, someone who thinks about the people. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it. I'm afraid an emperor who doesn't have the hearts of the people won't be able to last for long. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it. The emperor muttered to himself. A moment later, he waved his hand and said, since there's nothing wrong with you two, have a child as soon as possible so we can shut everyone up. Chapter 606 Making a Move on Him I Will Take My Leave. After Ji Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. Behind him, the emperor looked at his back, and a smile flashed across his eyes. It's too late to stand by the side now. As soon as Ji Chungrui stepped out of the palace gates, he bumped into King Kang again. A trace of impatience flashed across Ji Chungrui's eyes, but he still went forward and bowed. Greetings, King Kang. There's no need to be so polite. King Kang helped him and asked, I heard from my secondary consort about yesterday's matter. She did not do it on purpose. Please don't blame her. It's just a quarrel, there's no blame. If your highness has nothing else, I will be heading home for breakfast. Why don't we go to my residence for breakfast? We're cousins, after all. We haven't had a proper meal together yet. When our restaurant opens, we can have a good gathering there. I still have to go to the manor after breakfast. You don't need to be busy with the manor. Just leave it to the servants. Have you forgotten my current position? I research agriculture. If I don't keep an eye on it, how can I research them? King Kang was a little unhappy when he saw that Ji Chungrui wouldn't budge. He reluctantly replied, all right, let's talk another day. I will take my leave. Ji Chungrui cupped his fists and bowed before turning around to leave. At the same time, his face darkened. All parties were making a move on him, using their lack of children as an excuse. He had to be more careful in the future. After returning home and having breakfast, he told Ju Ying about this matter and said, you should be careful. Don't fall into their trap. I understand. Don't you think it's time for us to have a child? To be honest, now that King Rui is not around, it's time to be vigilant. It is not a suitable time. That's right. King Hui is probably coming back soon, too. Once he returns, there will definitely be a commotion. Let's wait a little longer. Yeah. I'll go out with you today to look at the new manor and see how Uncle Fang is doing there. Let's go together. Wait a minute, and let me change my clothes. Ju Ying returned to her room and changed into a clean set of clothes before heading out with him. First, Jiyu Chungrui went to his usual manor, and then Shizhu drove the carriage to the new manor. Halfway there, Ju Ying saw Jiyu Chengrui's notebook and had no choice but to head back and deliver it to him. At the same time, she made up her mind to buy a carriage soon. Otherwise, if something happened, it would be inconvenient to have only one carriage. After arriving at the manor, Ju Ying lifted the curtain when a mouthful of soil hit her. The wind was so strong that she could not open her eyes. Shizhu wasn't faring any better but still handed her bamboo hat over. "Madam, the wind is too strong. It's better for you to wear it." Ju Ying returned to the inside of the carriage. Under the table cover, she took a scarf from her interspace and covered her face. After getting out of the carriage, she raised her head and saw everyone busy building houses. She turned and asked Shizhu to tie the carriage down before walking inside with her. A row of brand new brick dormitories had been built, with new cow, sheep, pig, and chicken pens also completed. They were now building a warehouse. "Madam, you're here. I thought I saw the wrong person." Head Fang walked over and greeted her. "I'm here to check on the progress. When is it expected to be completed?" "In another 10 days. The warehouse must be built firmly, and we can't be careless." Chapter 607 Planning 1. Ju Ying nodded in agreement. "Great. Speed is important, but not at the cost of quality. You keep an eye on them. I'll make rounds, and we'll talk in detail after that. Do you need someone to accompany you?" "No need. It's fine as long as Shizhu follows me." "All right, the wind is strong. You two be careful." Head Fang turned around and left. Ju Ying brought Shizhu to check on the construction progress. Many stones were deeply embedded in the ground because no one had cared for this manor for years. There were many peach trees expanding over 200 acres, but the rest of the land was rugged and barren. Even Shizhu, who had never worked in the fields before, could see that this land was barren. She could not help but ask, "Madam, I'm afraid this land won't work. Was Master deceived into buying this place? With the price of wasteland, what good land can you buy? Besides, I don't plan to grow crops. I plan just to plant grass." "Plant grass and raise livestock?" "Yes, we can harvest a lot of grass in such a large area as long as we can use it reasonably," Ju Ying replied while looking around. She walked into the peach plantation and took a good look at them. Perhaps because of the many disasters over the years, all the peach trees were not in good condition. The seedlings were basically all dead and could be broken with just one hand. More than half of the adult trees were also dead. Although those still alive had bloomed flowers, very few bore fruit. Also, there was a lot of peach resin covering the tree. No wonder they did not mention peach trees when they sold the land. To put it bluntly, they were worthless. It was fine, as Ju Ying could dig them up and repurpose the land. There was a river in front of the peach plantation. The river was deep and wide, and it looked very clear. She could build a water wheel here, which would be convenient for the manor. "Madam, look, there are fish in this river, and they're not the small ones." Shizhu pointed at a spot and said. Ju Ying spread out her divine senses and looked into the river. There were quite some fish, most of which she had released from her interspace. They were not on alert and were gathering in the water weeds. It may be because there were not many people here, so they lived quite comfortably. She said, "Go back and tell Uncle Fang they can fish them up when they have time. These can be distributed to the employees. Unfortunately, we didn't bring a net with us. Otherwise, we could have fished them up now. Well, we can just bring it with us the next time we come. Let's go. We should head back since we're done surveying the place." They entered Head Fang's dormitory, and Head Fang immediately ran over and asked, "Madam, do you want to have lunch here?" "No, it's all right. We'll need to head back soon." Ju Ying answered and saw a pen and paper on the table. She took the piece of paper and quickly outlined the general appearance of the manor. She planned out a few areas and said, "When the time comes, we'll need to cut down this peach plantation and plant a total of 1,000 acres of grass. As for the seeds, I'll give them to you later. Remember to leave a few walking paths in the middle for easy care. After the summer harvest, if there were red sweet potatoes or white potato seedlings, they could also be planted. It will improve the soil quality, and the sweet potatoes could still grow back after harvesting them twice. On this side of the grass field, I'll try to find some soybean and peanut seeds to plant them. They can be used to nourish the land, and they are also great for providing tofu and oil for the restaurant. Further down is going to be the vegetable garden. Some fruit trees might also be planted here, so remember to put more fertilizer here and plow deeply. I'll get someone to install a water wheel later. It'll be much more convenient to water everything this way. Chapter 608 Planning 2. Headfang laughed when he heard that. A water wheel? That's great. With a water wheel, we can save a lot of energy. Yes, remember to plan the canal well. Otherwise, it will be difficult to water our crops. Don't worry, madam. I'm good at this. Good. 10 days later, I'll get people to transport the livestock and seedlings here. Remember to find some experienced people to take care of them. Otherwise, once a disease infects the livestock, they would all be destroyed. Madam, I really don't have anyone I can trust when it comes to raising livestock. Don't worry about this. Well, look for someone capable. You just have to plan the manor well and as soon as possible. Ju Ying gave him 1,000 silver notes and added, buy a few cattle and farming tools. We must get the manor up and running before the autumn harvest. I will remember it. Okay, well, head inside for now. If there's anything, remember to send a message. Ju Ying brought Shizhu back to the manor. After lunch, she went to the fields with the others to plant some seedlings. After returning home at night, Ju Ying climbed onto her soft couch and was too tired even to move her hands. Jiyu Chungrui saw this, washed his hands, and massaged her, saying, farming crops with sweat dripping into the soil isn't just a saying. This is a real farm, different from farming in your interspace. So, please don't head out to the farms in the future. It makes my heart ache. The main problem is that this work is too tiring for my waist. Oh, you'll know when you wake up tomorrow. Hunching over is bad for your body, too. Jiyu Chungrui then said, oh right, the sweet potatoes can be eaten soon. How many of them should we save up? Didn't King Rui request some sweet potato seedlings? Let's harvest them all, let everyone taste them, and plant whatever we have left in our manor. That's fine, too. Otherwise, more than half of the manor's fields would be empty. Why don't we plant all the watermelons on the empty land? Especially giant pumpkins that could feed cattle, sheep, and pigs. It could save us a lot of feed. Sure. Take out the seeds at night. Jiyu Chungrui nodded in agreement. After finishing her work at night, Ju Ying prepared half a sack of seeds and handed it to Jiyu Chungrui. Just as she was about to bring him out of the space, Jiyu Chungrui grabbed her and said, I've prepared a medicinal bath for you. Go over and take a good bath. Otherwise, you won't be able to get out of bed tomorrow. Let's go together. Ju Ying agreed. All right. Jiyu Chungrui walked into the bathroom with her. Despite having soaked in a medicinal bath, Ju Ying awoke the next day feeling sore and unpleasant, particularly the tendons from the back of her legs to the soles of her feet. She did some yoga on the bed and stretched her muscles before getting up. After breakfast, she called a guard and went to the horse market to buy a relatively luxurious carriage. Just as they were about to leave the market, someone suddenly shouted, Mrs. Gu, wait for me. Ju Ying turned her head to look. She paused momentarily before remembering that he was the middleman who had helped her purchase her shop. She asked the guards to park the carriage, got off the carriage, and waited at the side. When he approached them, she smiled and asked, Manager Xiao, are you also here to buy horses? A carriage. My previous carriage broke down, so I'm considering buying a new one. I wonder if your residence is still lacking helpers? Manager Xiao asked. Where did you get the new people from? Same old, from the same friend last time. What's their background? Some of them are disaster refugees, and some of them are slaves sold from the south. From the south? Did they commit a crime? Chapter 609 Newcomers. 1. It is as you predicted, but most of them are implicated by the main family's crimes. I know your requirements well, and most of them are in line with your conditions. This was why I called out to you. Sure, let's go over and take a look. Yes. You can decide once you think they are suitable. Let's go. Ju Ying got into her carriage after that. However, Manager Xiao didn't get in with her. Instead, he sat beside the carriage driver and began to show the way. After some time, they stopped outside a small courtyard in the northern district. After getting out of the carriage, the guard stood outside to take care of the carriage while Ju Ying followed Manager Xiao into the small courtyard. After some pleasantries, Ju Ying decided on 2 families after a series of selections. One of them was a butler in his 40s. He had a wife and 2 children who had just come of age. They were both in their prime. The other family was a gardener, and his wife used to be in charge of managing a small team. They had 2 daughters, one 12 and the other 8. Although the 2 families were both from the south, they had different masters. Furthermore, Ju Ying bought 4 more maidservants, as she knew they would be short of hands once they got busy. After signing the servant contracts, she paid the silver and returned to her residence. When she reached home, she asked Mother Chiu to settle them down. Once the newcomers finished eating their first meal, she called everyone to the backyard garden. She first let the people in the residence introduce themselves so that the newcomers could get to know them. Once that was done, only the newcomers introduced themselves. "I'll go first," the man who used to be a butler spoke out. "My name is Nyofugue. I used to be a butler in the home of a magistrate in the south. More than a month ago, my master's house was raided by the government, and all the servants were sold." He pointed to his wife and introduced her. "This is my wife, Mrs. Jiang. She was the nanny of our previous young miss and in charge of managing her courtyard. My daughter is Nyo Lirong, the servant girl of our previous young miss. My son, Nyo Deli, had learned accounting from an accountant but had never been an official disciple. However, he still had no problem with general bookkeeping. My name is Miao Dazhi, a gardener in our local justice court. My wife, Mrs. Liang, was originally a chef specializing in making noodles. We have 2 daughters. The older one is called Miao Xiaoyu, and the younger one is Miao Xiaoxue." When it was the remaining 4 maidservants' turn, the 4 stepped forward together and requested, "Mistress, please give us a new name." Ju Ying struggled internally after hearing that, as she was terrible at naming. She took a good look at the 4 of them and replied, "All right, according to your current position, from east to west, it's Chuanxiang, Xiaxiang, Chouxiang, and Dongxiang. If I remember correctly, Chuanxiang and Dongxiang know how to cook. You guys can work in the kitchen with Mrs. Liang. Nyo Lirong, Xiaxiang, and Chouxiang will stay and serve in the main courtyard. Mrs. Jiang would be Mother Chiu's assistant and manage all the affairs in the residence. As for Nyo Fugue, he could take care of the front yard while Miao Dazhi could lead others to trim the flowers and plants in the manor. Miao Xiaoyu and Miao Xiaoxue, do you want to cook? If you want to, I can arrange for you to learn in the kitchen." "Can I? I would like to follow my mother and learn how to make noodles." Miao Xiaoxue raised her head and asked in surprise. "Of course, go ahead to the kitchen to help out." Ju Ying then looked at Miao Xiaoyu. "I like gardening, so I want to learn more gardening from my father." Miao Xiaoyu stole a glance at Miao Dazhi after she finished speaking. Ju Ying looked at Miao Dazhi's darkened face and asked, "Is there anything wrong? My father said that gardeners are all men. It's too tiring for a woman to do it, so, Miao Xiaoyu stuttered and shut her mouth. Chapter 610 Newcomers. 2. Ju Ying looked at Miao Dazhi in surprise. Although she didn't know why he rejected Miao Xiaoyu, she didn't want to kill a child's interest. Therefore, she advised him, although there is a saying that you should love what you do, if you don't have a strong passion for it, you will be a layman for the rest of your life and never reach the level of a master. However, If she's really passionate about her career, she would wholeheartedly devote her life to research and creating something new. It would also give her a happier life. Taking the easiest example, cooking. If a person is passionate about cooking, even if she doesn't have the talent, she would devote her entire being to learning it. She would also actively study and create new dishes. However, without a deep passion, she would just learn the bare minimum and not be interested in improving herself. No matter how talented she would be in that field, she would be average. Therefore, if a child wants to learn something, we should encourage them. Only after learning would the child know if it was suitable for them. If she can really learn well in the future, how about I make a flower bed for her? Miao Dazhi pondered for a moment and looked at Miao Xiaoyu. Are you sure you want to learn gardening? After you start, you can't give up halfway. I want to learn. Miao Xiaoyu's eyes lit up. All right, from tomorrow onwards, you'll follow me. Miao Dazhi nodded. All right, I'll tell you all my requirements. Zhu Ying smiled. I only have 2 requirements for you all. One is loyalty. There is only one outcome to betraying your master, and that is to live a life worse than death. The second is diligence and neatness. I won't punish those who slack off. I'll only deduct your monthly salary. It'll be 100 coppers per discovery, and there's no limit to that. In other words, if this month's salary isn't enough to cover your deduction, your next month's salary will be deducted until you get diligent. Butler Nyo and Mother Chio will keep an eye on everyone in the future. Of course, I'm not inhumane. If you're really sick, you can take a sick leave and not get their monthly salary deducted for the day. Yes, mistress. Nyo Fugue and Mother Chio replied at the same time. All right, get to work. Nyo Deli, come with me. After Zhu Ying finished speaking, she led him to the main courtyard. Nyo Deli was surprised by her beckoning and followed Zhu Ying nervously. When they arrived at the main courtyard, Zhu Ying brought him directly to her study and took out an account book. This is the account book I keep. Take a look and record our accounts in this format in the future. It's also convenient for me to check the accounts. Nyo Deli finally let out a sigh of relief. He was still afraid that Zhu Ying would have an opinion of him, but it turned out that she wanted to test him. He took the account book and looked at it seriously. After a moment, his eyes lit up because Zhu Ying's tabulated accounting method was simple and clear to understand. Not only was it easy to remember, but it was also very convenient to calculate the final bill. After studying carefully, he replied, Mistress, I'll remember this method. From today onwards, I will strictly follow your format. Zhu Ying nodded and took out some more account books. These are all the accounts in the residence. Go back and study it and make a budget for next month. I understand. Yes, give me an answer in 3 days. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me. Remember, you only have one chance. I hope you can seize it firmly. Yes, I will do my best to finish my apprenticeship as soon as possible. Nyo Deli answered and picked up the account books, leaving quickly to study them. After he left, Zhu Ying asked Shizhu to call Kuehua over. She told Kuehua, later, choose the same materials you are wearing and make 2 sets of spring clothes for each newcomer. In addition, Nyo Lirong will be in charge of serving tea. As for Xiaoxiang and Qiuxiang, you can make arrangements for their designation. I'll leave this courtyard to you in the future. I hope you'll take responsibility and don't disappoint me. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.